Hello, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator, coming back to you with another video. And in this video, I have Larissa Marantz. Welcome.
Hey, Deborah. How you doing?
I'm good. Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. I'm Larissa. I'm an illustrator, an educator, former animation artist. That's
cool.
What I am.
Let's get right into it.
Sounds good.
Where are you from and how was it growing up?
Okay, so I am a daughter of a Black father and a Filipino mother. I grew up in a biracial family, and I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, because my dad was in the Navy. I met my mom in the Philippines, and moved to California when I was young. Decided that I wanted to be an artist when I started drawing comics from the Sunday Funnies. And my parents were really supportive of that. And I just wanted to draw all the time. And that was what it was like growing up. It was just me drawing all the time.
Did you have any siblings or anything?
Yes, I have a younger sister. Her name's Yvette, and she is an amazing human being. And and I love her dearly.
So get more into like your journey in art and animation in your childhood. Like I know you had an uncle who created a charcoal portrait that you were enamored by. Yeah. So how do we progress to maybe high school or college?
Okay, so I first realized that I really like to draw when I started looking at like the Sunday Funnies, and I just started drawing Charlie Brown. And I didn't really know whether I was good at it or not, but my parents thought they saw that I was, I guess, and they were really supportive. So they would, get me pencils and crayons, Crayola, and all that other stuff. And my uncle, who lives in the Philippines, actually had a photography studio, and he still does portraits and he still does photography and videography. But when my sister and I were young, he had taken a photo that my mom had sent him, and he did a charcoal portrait of it, like a pastel charcoal portrait of it, and then sent it back. And so this portrait of us sat in our bedroom, on our bedroom wall, and I would just look at that every day when I was younger, and I would just stare at it, and it was just amazing. And I would kind of like try to like, how did he do that? I would just stare at it and try and figure out like how in the like what is going on with that? My little brain was just like, trying to figure everything out. And I think that's just kind of when it started. Is I liked to draw, and then I was always looking at this portrait of us, and that kind of made me think like, well, this is what's possible in art, because if you're drawing when you're a little kid and you have fun with it, and you're not exposed to what the possibilities are in that creative area, then you don't really know. And so I had grown up at such a young age with knowing like the mastery that was capable of being had with a pencil. Yeah. So that was probably a really huge impact on me that I had no idea. And so my parents were just super supportive of that. And when I went to high school, I think that was the first time I was actually in middle school. The first time I had an art class was in middle school. And that was the experience I had where the instructor showed us how to draw something, and I sat down and I drew it, and then I looked around the classroom and no one else could do it. And it was like the silliest thing. It was like cattails. And it looked like a hot dog with like a skewer going through it, and it was going in different directions. And then he showed us how to draw like a really simple UFO and just a cat or something like that. And I just looked around the room and was like, what is wrong with all these people? Why are they so bad at this? And then everyone looked at my stuff and they're like, wow, like she's really good. And I didn't think that there was any difference between my skill level and anyone else's until that moment. Like I just thought everyone can draw. But now I realize that no, not everyone could draw. So I just started to, I continue to draw all my life. And then I went into art class in high school, and I had thankfully I had art classes in high school. I know not a lot of people have access to art classes, which is really, it's really challenging if you don't. So I was thankful to have that in high school, and just did that the entire 4 years of high school. Probably, I think I was like most likely to succeed in the senior yearbook of the animation, in senior yearbook, and I probably was like holding up one of the things that I did in the back of the yearbook. And I ended up thinking like, okay, this is what I'm good at. Like, I'm history, math, science, English. Like, I like English, but I wasn't really good at it. So, I mean, I really felt bad at everything. Everything. I couldn't do anything, literally, except for art. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do art. And the funny thing was that when I was looking at colleges years and years and years ago, they didn't have a whole lot of majors. Like, it was, it was fine art, and then architecture. I'd taken architecture classes in high school and thought, well, that's creative, that's really cool. And that, you can have a job as an architect. So I actually wanted to become an architect and was looking at architecture as a major, and then had a family friend who let me go into his business, and he showed me around his architecture business, and I was so excited, like, yeah, I'm going to study architecture. And then, like, at the very end, my mom and I were walking out, and he's like, yeah, don't do this, Larissa. Don't. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, you're too creative. You can't, this is not a creative field. Like, you're creative, but you won't be able to be creative in this field until you've done years and years and years of work, because up until then, you're just like building other people's stuff. Like, and so that was, I was like, oh, okay, now what do I do? Right. So I understood that I liked to draw. So I was just looking at like drawing and painting majors. So I went into drawing and painting, and went to Cal State Fullerton and did drawing and painting, and loved it. But the last year or two, some of my friends started taking these really fun classes that were more geared towards animation, and there were these animation classes that started popping up, these really small ones, and things with like storyboarding and sequential art and like different types of figure drawing that wasn't like totally long poses, but were more quick studies and gestures and stuff. And so I was like, oh, this looks like fun. Like, these people in these classes over here, in the animation classes, like, they're way more fun than like the fine art classes that I was taking. So I just started going in that direction. And that's because they were saying, because I live in Orange County, and I know you're in the LA area. And so, when you're in college, you're like, okay, I need a job, and everyone, and everyone has heard the whole, like, well, you can't really get a job in art, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I wanted to teach, but then at some point someone said, well, if you want to teach, you're going to have to go get your master's degree, and you're going to have to write a thesis. And for some reason I was like, oh my God, I have to write a thesis. Like, there's no way I could write a thesis. That's just so scary. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to teach, because I don't want to, I don't want to spend more years in school to get a job. Like, I want to go get a job. I just want to go do something. So, I said, yeah, I'm not gonna teach. I'm gonna go get a job. And everybody was talking about the animation industry. It was like, we're close to LA, about an hour away. And so that's how it started. It was just like, we all go out, me and my friends would all go out with our sketchbooks, and we'd go to nightclubs and draw people. Like, we'd be like the losers on the back table, like, with our beer and our sketchbooks and drawing people, and everyone else is just like talking and stuff, and we're like,
that's definitely the first time I've heard that.
It was fun. So and so that's how I kind of like went towards that path, towards animation.
Or you all were on the cutting edge because they have drinking draws now. So
Yeah, that's true. They do. Yeah, we were doing
so
drinking
you
draws
all were
before
ahead
they
of
were actually drinking draws.
yes.
Before it
Full
was a
thinker.
thing.
So have you ever gotten to tackle like the style of that portrait that you looked at all those times? Did
Yes.
you ever figure out how to do that?
Yes, I did. In fact, that's interesting that you asked that because for senior year in high school, I had this art project that I'd done. It was probably an 18-inch by 24 portrait, charcoal pencil portrait, graphite portrait, and I told my instructor, like, this is going to take me a long time. And I did the grid method where you grid it off and then you just focus like super hyper focused on one square at a time. And I just inched my way across that thing all the way until it was done. And when it was done, it was, it was like super hyper realistic, a black man holding his face. It was Muhammad Ali's trainer. And I can't even remember the name. I found a photograph from a magazine, because this is what you did back in the day. You like go through the National Geographics and the magazines and you tear pictures and stuff. And then you like use that as your references before the internet.
Right.
And so that's what I did. And so that pencil portrait is hanging in my dad's house. And it's that same level that my Uncle Benji had done, at least that I thought I did. So
yeah, when I moved to California, I had to throw away all my magazines because I never went through. Like I collected like different like Oprah magazine like stuff because I was like wanted to look through for like Black people could like draw, and then I never looked through. I had like so many little cases, and then I'm like, well, I'm trying to pare down, so I tried to recycle them, but Louisiana doesn't have like recycle like that. So,
yeah,
I gotta throw these away.
It's so funny because it's like you're like, oh, I'm going to save these. I'm going to use these. And you just hold on to them forever and ever and ever. And then you're like, yeah, I'm never going to use these. And then you find out about this thing called Pinterest.
Right.
Which literally renders all your magazines, totally pointless. And all you have to do is go on Pinterest and like spend like hours and hours scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And you just got, infinite access to amazing photo reference. So does away with that big old box of magazine tear sheets.
That is heavy.
It is heavy.
So why do you love animation?
Someone says, hey, you can draw all day long and I will pay you to draw. And then when you're done drawing, you're going to get to like work with these really creative group of people, and then you're all going to get to sit in a room and look at the stuff that you did, and then you're going to show it to the world, and the world's going to be like, wow, that's really cool, and everyone's happy. that's my feeling about working in animation. But why did I love animation? I mean, it's cool. It's just you can tell all kinds of stories.
It's self-explanatory. Have you seen it?
I mean, you've seen animated shows, right? There's just so many in different directions you can go with younger stories, with adult stories, and just the humor. It can be so sweet, it can be sick, it can be gruesome, it can be just totally offensive, but there's so much potential and there's so much creativity in it. But it's all coming from the minds of, these creative people and these artists. And I don't know, it's just so fun. I know that's not a very thorough.
It is your answer, but it's a great answer.
It's my answer. Yeah.
So some projects that you've worked on, Rugrats and Rocket Power, and then you've illustrated loads of books like for the same properties and Avatar, The Last
Airbender. Yeah.
and all that type of stuff. So, how did you break into the animation industry? What was your experience, and then how'd you leave?
How did I get in? And
Yeah.
then how did I exit? Yeah, I mean, I was really only in the animation industry for less than 5 years,
Mhm.
which is, as you know, is hard. It is hard to get in, right?
Mhm.
I graduated from college, Cal State Fullerton. I didn't even have an animation degree because they didn't have an animation degree. I had a drawing and painting degree, and I went to school for about a year or two after that, studied with like Carl Ganas, Glenn Vilppu, um, which is interesting because I'm going to be teaching a class right after him with New Masters Academy, like on Friday. So just kind of crazy that that's happening. But took classes at the Animation Union, took classes at the Animation Academy with Charles Zimbalist,
Mhm.
and study with people like Joe Weatherly, who was a classmate of mine, Steven Silver, and Jose Lopez, and just all kinds of really talented, amazing
Mhm.
people. And I just kept working at it. I remember Joe Weatherly was telling us when we were at Cal State Fullerton, like, y'all are going to have to drive from Orange County to LA. Like, just get used to that hour drive. Because a lot of us at the time were like, oh, it's so far. He was telling us, you guys are whiners. Don't
Right.
don't be whining, just drive, go to LA and just get used to the drive. And so that's just what we did. We just got used to, driving an hour and a half to take our classes. So studied, then there was some small little animation studio in Santa Ana that one of my friends got a job at. And then I was like, hey, can I meet you for lunch or something? And maybe I can get a job there too. So then I ended up working there. And
Mhm.
that's how I always tell my friends, or that's how I always tell my students now, is that if you're in college, or the crew or community that you have, that your community is important because you all are looking for jobs.
Mhm.
And when one of you gets a job, then you go and you make connections with those people that they're with, that they know, and
Mhm.
you help each other out. At least that's how it happened for me. So I ended up working at the small animation studio doing like cleanup animation, and then I heard Rugrats was hiring Klasky Csupo.
Mhm.
And there were a lot of other studios that were hiring constantly, but I just I was always working on my portfolio and, driving it up to LA, dropping it off at all these different studios, and then driving back to pick up my portfolio with a rejection letter and stuff. And that was really a bummer, but that's just what you did.
Uh-huh.
And I just kept doing it. I just kept doing it, and I kept doing it. And then Charles Zimbalist at the Animation Academy, he had a friend who was working on the Rugrats, Sharon
Mhm.
Ross, and she's over at Family Guy and Fox Family, and it's always about the people that you're connecting with,
Yeah.
So it was my instructor who had a friend. She said, hey, we're looking for people. And he told me, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go over there and try and get a job. And so, I tried and I submitted my portfolio, and what's great is when you stop getting the rejections, and your rejections aren't just a no, but it's a no, but,
Mhm.
and that but dot, 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 that's the hope when where you're getting
Yeah.
close. So then it was like, no, but dot, 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 we might have an opening later or whatever. And so
Mhm.
that's when things start to shift. And so I had been working really hard and, trying to improve my drawing skills and stuff. And then when you get that dot, 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 you just keep knocking on that door, but not like, a stalker.
Right.
You're just like, and then you wait,
Hey,
and there you
remember
go.
me?
Okay, yeah, maybe it's time. I haven't heard back. And so, yeah, you just keep doing that, connecting, and that's basically what happened is, I, it's also being friendly and saying, I'm willing to work on the things that I need to work on, and I am going to be a hard worker, and I am dedicated, and just all the things that show that you are a person who is a good collaborator, and that you can bring something to a team project, not just with your skills, but with your interpersonal skills. That's really important, because it's, you're working with people. And so I think that's really part of what happened. And I think that's usually what happens with me anyway, is that I do show that I can work hard. And I think that's important, that people do show that they can work hard and that they're dedicated, but that also that you're somebody that people would want to work with,
Yes.
and that you can bring something to the team, that's uplifting, or, fun, or just serious and focused on creating the best work that you can do for the project, and not for yourself. So I think that's what it was.
So how was your experience during that time, and then why did you end up leaving?
Oh yeah, so my exit. So so I ended up getting a job on the Rugrats and Rocket Power, and I actually got hired while I was pregnant with my firstborn. My boss is female, her boss is female, and her boss is female. So it was really nice to have that supportive, environment of people who understand what it's like to be a woman. And so that was really great. My exit was because I had just had my second child, and I missed out a lot on my youngest one, who, missed his first walk, and this first this and first that, because I was working. And although they were really flexible about working from home and working in studio, I was able to do commute and work half in studio and then half at home. And of course now everybody, everyone knows that everyone can work from home. So which is, the animation industry right now is like everyone is working from home, and it's like, yes, everyone can do that. That's totally a legitimate thing. It's possible. So I had to prove that back then, because nobody really did that. But I also, I knew that I wanted to be at home for my daughter. And I say this all the time, I knew that I was replaceable at the studio. Like, even though it took me so long to get a job, anybody talented enough, with skills could have done what I did. But there was only one mother to my child. And even though she was being raised by my husband and my mother-in-law, who she was amazing for coming and helping us, with the kids, I just knew you can have a lot of people loving your children, right? But they only have one mother. And I wanted to be there for her. So that's why I exited. But one of the things that made it easier for me to exit was transitioning what I was going to do, because part of what I thought of was, look, it took me so long to get the skills to get a job. And I was only in this industry for like less than 5 years. I can't just let this stuff atrophy. Like, I've got all this knowledge, like, what am I going to do with it? So I started teaching a class with Charles and Billis at the Animation Academy. And that was the light bulb when I was like, oh, I can teach people. I can teach people what I know. And wait, I did want to be a teacher. That's right. Okay, then I'm going to do that. So that was really the thing that made me go, yes, I can leave, and I can still be creative, and I can teach people. And then also I started illustrating picture books for Nickelodeon. And I had started doing that before I left the studio. The Rugrats are really kind of ugly, wonky, crazy, hard to draw characters. And so the publishing companies would go to like the studio and ask the talent at the studio, like, okay, well, we need these books. So you guys can already draw the book. So like, can you draw this book? And so that's how it happened. Some like some of the people that were working in the animation studio were already doing books. And so I started doing that as well. And I actually was working on a book while I was pregnant, or actually not while I was pregnant, but while I was nursing my third child. So it's just, that was my transition. It was, okay, I can take my skills and I can leave the studio and I can teach and I can illustrate books. And that's how I ended up working with Simon & Schuster and doing a bunch of their, Rugrats books. And I did a Lazy Town book. And yeah, but it was all licensed properties, like Nickelodeon's licensed properties. So that's how that worked out.
I'm thinking about it. I'm like, man, I wish my like drawings weren't in storage, because I would be like, here's my Chucky drawing, and then here's my Tommy drawing, and here's my Angelica drawing. I'm picturing them in my head, but they're all in storage.
They're all in the storage back in Louisiana, huh?
Actually, my storage is in Texas, out of all places. Didn't know that was going to happen, but hey, here we are.
Man,
I was like, I'm moving to LA. I'm guessing the storage will be in LA. Absolutely not. Something to check. You know, when you have these slip ups in being adulting, you're like, sometimes you're like excited because you think of a question to ask where the answer is like, oh, I'm glad I asked that question. But then there's other times where you're like, I should have asked that question. Like, I'm not a full adult.
Getting there. You get adults make adult mistakes too. Don't think that it's not because you're not an adult. It's just because, this people, that's just how the brain works sometimes,
I mean, I saw a meme where it was like, in your 20s, you're like thinking that you'll know all this stuff, but then in your 30s, you're like, oh yeah, nobody knows anything. Like, so it's freeing to realize as you get older, you're everybody just moving day by day. Nobody really knows what they're doing per se. So the sooner you learn that, the freer you are.
I think the older I get, the more I realize I don't know. And that's the thing. When you're young, you're like, I know so much. And you're walking around being like, I know this, I know that, I know that. Yes, I got you. I know that. And then as you get older, you're like, I think there's a little bit more I need to know and a little bit more I need to learn. And that's just the thing. There's a circle of knowledge. Okay. There's always like what you know and what you know that you don't know. But then there's this outside circle that's like, you don't even know that you don't know it. And it's big. It's big. And you don't even know that you don't know it. You don't even you don't get to that point till you even know that that's a space when you're older. So, but before then you're just like, I know this, I know that. And here's stuff that I don't know, but that's fine because I can learn it. So yeah, don't be hard on yourself.
Yeah, there's like a Socrates or Plato quote where it was like, as soon as you think you know everything, you don't. So
yeah, for real.
So you designed Aunt T for the Rugrats. How was that experience designing a Black character for a popular TV show?
Oh, that was really cool. So first of all, I just was really thankful that I got to be a part of that Kwanzaa episode because I didn't mention this, but I actually grew up watching the Rugrats. Not grow up, but I mean, I was in high school, so I watched Rugrats in high school, and so we had a Black director, Anthony Bell, and it was really great that since it was like it was me and Anthony Bell were like the Black people in the studio, so they're like, well, we have to have the Black people in the studio work on the Kwanzaa episode. It's like, yeah, you better. So that was great because I got to design Irma P. Hall when she came into the studio, and I got to watch her do her voice acting and stuff. And I just kind of did some sketches of her. And then, it was really cool working with Anthony, designing her character and stuff was great. And, I mean, it's a cool little episode, and, I don't know, it's just nice it's nice to be able to say that I did that. And I didn't even realize at the time maybe how important that was. And I don't think I really thought of how important that was until like now that the Rugrats have kind of got this resurgence of popularity and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you know, it was just a show. I tell everybody, it was just a show. It was just a job, you know, and it was a really fun job. And it
Mm-hmm.
was really cool at the time to say that I worked on the show. But then it's just weird that now people are like, oh, Rugrats. I'm like, yeah, that was a long time ago.
Um, let's see here. What would you say have been the biggest breakthroughs in your career, whether it's related to the animation industry or your teaching or whatever?
Huh. I mean, I always talk about how just getting into the animation was such a feat in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think
Mm-hmm.
like I think one really big breakthrough was see, because I study drawing and painting, and I I knew that I wanted a job, but I still was really like a fine artist, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I was trained for most of my in college. So when back in 2008, when Obama was coming around the corner,
Mm-hmm.
before he was president, and there was this contest to paint Obama's portrait. And at the time, God, this is so long ago, but at the time there was just so many photos of him everywhere, like on magazine covers and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
when I had painted this portrait of Obama for this contest, and actually like made, you know, didn't win the contest, but had my artwork chosen as one of the finalists.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge because then my artwork got to be, you know, exhibited and stuff, and that was in Washington D.C. And then that was really cool. So that was my
So
breakthrough.
with that one, I so with what was the junk mail story? Was that with that
Yeah,
or something else?
yeah. Um, so that is the junk email
Mm-hmm.
story.
Mm-hmm.
That is the junk email story where I had submitted my artwork, and it was the notification that I was that not that I was a finalist, but the notification that I was invited to participate in the Washington D.C. gallery came into my junk email.
Mm-hmm.
And normally I just trash it, but there was something that day that was just like, just look, just look. So I looked, and there it was, and it was crazy because this second I opened it and read it, it was an invitation. It was like, okay, you had painted this portrait, and the
Mm-hmm.
portrait of Obama that I had painted went to was displayed during the Democratic National Convention, and so this was an invitation to be a part of like the inauguration pop-up gallery in Washington D.C. And so the minute that I had opened that email and they were inviting me to paint something, it was like, shoom, I have an idea. It just came out of nowhere. And it was like totally, completely envisioned in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I got pretty darn close to
Mm-hmm.
what I had envisioned in the
Mm-hmm.
process. But this email came December 26th,
Mm-hmm.
and the inauguration is January 20th. And the painting had to be done before the inauguration, and it had to be sent and hung. So I literally had 10 days. From the time that I had the email, I had 10 days to make a painting and ship it to Washington,
You can
D.C.
tell an artist didn't send this email.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, art is easy, 10 days.
Well, okay, so the person who sent it, Yossi Sargent, is Shepard. He worked with Shepard Fairey, and he was actually responsible for Shepard Fairey's, becoming so big. And so, yeah, so he manages, those things. And he's an amazingly creative person. And he's amazing at, he has a task force. He's amazing at creating these huge active, shows and engaging the artistic community to do activism work and use their art to push out messages of progressive, ideas and stuff. And so that was really cool. So in terms of breakthrough for me, that was the really big thing because, I was just having my work seen at such a huge level like that. And then being a part of such a big event and such a big show, and then getting to meet like other artists like Shepard Fairey and all these other people that had their work at the show was, was pretty darn cool. So
how would you describe your art style?
It's all over the place. I mean, it depends on what it is that I'm doing. Like I just started doing more expressive stuff in my sketchbook literally last night. And I mean, if you're working in animation, your style has to be simple enough so that it can be duplicated in the pipeline of designers, storyboard artists, layout artists, animators, things like that. So you're working with limited line and shape language and, communicating these ideas of characters and story and personality and things like that. So when I was working in animation or when I'm working for projects that are based on that, those are the constraints. So you understand that going in, if you're going to design, like if you're designing a character for animation, it's probably, it should be different than if you're designing a character for a game art, or for an illustrated picture book, because you still have to be mindful of the design aspects, the principles of what makes design a given design appealing, but you have to be mindful of what's the end result? Where is this going? What's the end use of this thing? So those are the considerations that I think of in terms of what I'm going to do stylistically. I have, and even in my picture book illustration portfolio, I have a huge range of styles. And I think that's probably why some people, that's why I get chosen for certain projects, because they see my breadth, my extensive ability of, doing it in different ranges. And part of it is because, being a character designer, you have to understand how to make things on model. This is one of the things that I would always look at, like whenever I would see Rugrats stuff, because I was so cued in on how to make these characters look on model. Anytime I saw something that looked a little wonky, I was like, that's off model. No, it's off model. But it comes from being a portrait artist. So I actually never talked about this, but I did portraits in high school. That was probably my first entrepreneurial job, is just drawing people's portraits and doing that like at street fairs and art fairs all over the place on weekends and stuff. And capturing a portrait, you have to get the likeness, and there's a certain way of doing that. You have to understand spatial relationships between the negative space of a person's features and then the actual space of the features themselves, and how they relate to everything, and how they all work together in this gestalt, overall thing to make a likeness look like a likeness. And then when you're doing caricatures, it's still the same thing, but it's understanding those relationships and then exaggerating them in an appealing and fun way. So it's the person still recognizable as whoever they are with those characteristics, but it's a different take. And so I think my understanding of, portraiture and caricature has helped me to be able to emulate other styles, because like that little kid in my bedroom looking at the artwork on the wall, like just trying to figure out how that was done. I think it's that analytical brain in me. I'm just always like thinking, how did they do that? And I'm always deconstructing things constantly. And I know that's how my brain works. I understand that's how my brain works now. That's probably why it's easier for me. And I actually use that same principle when I'm teaching art classes too. So I'm always like breaking, and I know you teach art too, or you teach classes. So it's like, how do you teach someone how to do something? You have to tell them, we have to understand how the process works. You got to break it down into simple steps so that it can be duplicated. Well, it's like art. How do you, it's just this big, amorphous thing. How do you break that down? Well, there's ways of doing it. So once you figure out the process, then, and you create these kind of like step-by-step, methods, and then it can be duplicated. So yeah.
Definitely. So when did you start OC Art Studios? Like, how did it start? How has it grown? What is your goal?
Yeah, so I started, OC Art Studios kind of started in a strange way. I started teaching art classes in my garage to my son, who was young at the time. And the art classes grew from my garage to with just a couple of kids to a couple more kids that I didn't know, because then parents started telling their other friends, and I started teaching kids that I had no idea who they were. And then a friend of mine said, you should teach these classes at the elementary school. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. It's too much work, like I got paperwork. Like, oh, I don't want paperwork. I don't want to deal with paperwork. Like the whole idea of like being a teacher and the thesis, doing a master's in just like all that stuff scared me. So like the paperwork scared me going, which is really dumb at the time. But I ended up doing it, and I started teaching art classes at my kids' elementary school, and then I started like just branching out to other elementary schools in the area, and I needed help because I couldn't do it by myself. So I ended up hiring other art instructors to work alongside me, and then I ended up hiring those art instructors to like teach additional classes, and then other schools were finding out about what I was doing. And then I couldn't teach everything, and then I needed more instructors, and it just kind of grew from there. And I ended up at one point like having like 30, I don't know, we were at like 30 schools or something. It was ridiculous. But we were teaching at 3 different school districts, and I had like 15 different instructors, and just going all over the place, teaching everything from like cartooning and like drawing and painting and watercolor classes and comics classes and everything. And it was fun. It was really cool. And that was all elementary school kids,
Nice.
And so, but what happened, obviously we had the pandemic, and that, put a kibosh on all of that. I started narrowing down the classes because it got really hard to manage. And when the pandemic hit and all the schools shut down, I just shut down OC Art Studios and stopped doing that. But I started doing online classes just like everyone else, but I wasn't trying to get the kids, because I knew that the kids, like the teachers, were like, oh, well, there's YouTube, go to YouTube. And so I was like, how can I compete with YouTube? Because I'm not on YouTube. I had wanted to be on YouTube years ago, but never went in that direction. So I had already been teaching high school students how to prepare their portfolios for college. And I'd helped a lot of students get into their chosen art colleges by helping them put their portfolios together. So I thought I'll just, I'll teach a class like that. And
do you still have 100% success?
What's that?
Do you still have 100% success?
They've all, let's see, all the people that I've helped to get into an art college, I think it's probably like 99%. Yeah, but yeah, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. It's a lot of work to be a high school student in art and to put a portfolio together for college. It's just, putting your stuff together for college is hard enough, just get the application process alone, and the writing your application essays, your personal essays and things like that. And then, guess what? You have to put a portfolio together. And guess what? I know you want to learn how to do art, but you have to show us that you know how to do art before we teach you how to do art. you know.
I could have
So
went to Savannah College of Art and Design, but they required a portfolio, and Rochester Institute of Technology didn't, so I applied to RIT. And got
we'll
in.
teach you, but you got to show us you know what you're doing before we teach you. And so, like, I was like, what? And I did the same thing. Like, I went to school for 2 years, community college, so that I could transfer to a college as, you know, a junior, because I was trying to, get that job.
Right.
So I took my portfolio and went to like Art Center and Cal Arts and, you know, the different art schools. And they were like, oh, yes, you have a lovely portfolio. We'll let you in, but you got to start over. You got to start over as a freshman. I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that. So I didn't go. I didn't go because I personally was just like, I'm on the fast track. I need a job. Like, I don't want to wait another 2 years. I don't want to start over. So I transferred to Cal State Fullerton. I transferred to Cal State Fullerton. I didn't even need a portfolio, but then, you know, that's what I did, you know, just like you. But, you know, putting a college portfolio together for submission to an art college is really challenging. And so I had been helping students do that with some good success. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to teach a class online, maybe I can do something like that, like and I called it my Drawing for Animators and Illustrators class. And this is the class that I'm still teaching, like, and I, you know, teach tomorrow. But I started this last year, and it happened right around the time where the social unrest over the summer happened. Yeah. You know, so, you know, George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and people were out in the streets, and everyone, I mean, the world was on fire anyway. Yeah. And then that happened. Yeah. And here's little Larissa just trying to run an art class. And I'm like, why? Why is this important? This is so dumb. Like,
but I feel like that around that time was when I kind of like, because that's when I got back on Twitter, because I was like not on Twitter before then. But that's when it was like, okay, that's how I kind of found you during that time. And so I feel like, from my personal perspective, after the George Floyd incident, and then Brianna Williams from BlkWmnAnimator just like tweeted, hire more Black animators. And then it was like this takeoff of, the first wave was talking about hiring more Black professionals in the animation and maybe the comic book industry. And the second wave was like, a lot of dudes get in trouble for sexual assault in the comic book and animation industry. And then the third wave was schools getting in trouble for being racist. So
I was on that third wave too.
Yes.
Oh, Lord, let me tell you, that was so hard. So being a part of a private university and art school, and, you know, dedicating a good chunk of my life to a school, and then finding out that they just aren't supportive of, you know, of their BIPOC instructors or students in the way that they should have been was really hard. It was really hard. And I left because it was happening all over the place. I mean, at the time.
And the stuff you tweeted out regarding your coworker and stuff like that, when I was doing my research for this interview, I was like, oh, that was her. I remember reading that. And
yeah, I ended up making the school trend on Twitter because I was talking about it. And it was so crazy because it's like, this is my experience as a Black woman educator. And I'm just going to put it out there that this is the injustice that I feel here. And then, oh, guess what? Pandora's box opens. Everybody else had some kind of similar experience. And these things go unnoticed because everyone's just dealing with their own suffering and their own pain and not sharing about it. And then as soon as someone says, oh, I have not felt safe, or I have not felt heard or seen or cared about in this particular community. And then other people go, what? Me too. Same thing. And that's when you realize it's not an individual problem. It's a systemic problem. and it's a systemic problem that runs deep. And I was done. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to go teach on my own terms, and I'm just going to do my own thing. And so that's why I started. I started bringing some other instructors in with me to teach alongside with me. Caleb Cleveland, Danny Vonderay, they're really great. Eden Barber is my teacher assistant. She's amazing. And they're super talented. But at the time, I didn't even think of it. I was just trying to get my class filled during the time when everyone was like screaming about the things that we had been screaming out about for years, for decades, the injustices and the racism. And I just thought, like, why is filling my art class so important? It just felt so unimportant. And that's when people were like, wait a second, you know what? Let's do something about this. And so people started donating to sponsor a student, a Black student. And then, oh, guess what? You're a Black woman. I'm going to support you in what you're doing. And it was just, it was like the floodgates open. It was an amazing thing. And I had no idea it was going to happen. And so I just went with it. I said, all right, I'm going to do this. I am going to offer my classes to as many Black artists as I can, because it's a virtual space. It's not a brick and mortar space where I have a limited capacity of like, oh, I only have 30 chairs. No, I have a Zoom room limit of 100. So until I can pay for the next level up, like that's how many students I can get. So every student that pays for the class helps to fund the class so that it runs. And then once I am running the class, then I can open it up to as many BIPOC creators as possible. And I was focusing on specifically Black artists at the time, because that's where the need is, And
I just would like to say that I did send the link to my niece, but I highly doubt she took your class.
Oh, there's still time.
Teenagers, like, and execution. So so what would you say is the difference between teaching like maybe itty bitties or younger children to adults? Like, I know there's stuff that's in adults where we have to like unlearn and then learn, but what's the difference?
Well, okay, I'll actually talk about what the similarities are before I talk about the differences, because, obviously we know the difference in that kids are kids and adults are adults, but the similarities is that everybody gets joy from creating something from nothing. And when you're able as an educator to break something down and explain it in such a way that that information can be taken in and processed and then duplicated by a student, and then you can see the joy that they have from the creation that they've done on their own based on what you told them or what you directed them to do, that's like ageless, from 5 to, 88 or whatever. In fact, I had a friend over the other day who was like, the only reason why I could draw a cup was because I had a professional artist sitting there showing me how to draw it step by step. And I said, see, but you could do it. Everybody wants to be able to have pride in their accomplishments and what they can do. And it's frustrating. And I know this from experience because this is how I felt in math and science and history and English. It's so frustrating when someone is explaining something to you and you just don't get it.
Right.
And it's like, you feel like there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your brain.
And then add on that they could be a horrible teacher as well. Where they're like, oh, they just, like, you ask a question and they just repeat what they said. But like, obviously, I didn't get it the first time, so I need it. Say it in a different way, please.
Right. It's like, I didn't understand it the first time, so why are you telling me again? Because I still don't get it. But when you're a kid, you don't know if a teacher is good or bad. You just know, I'm not getting it.
Right.
I'm not getting it. Something's wrong with me. So I know what that feels like deeply. It's a frustrating thing to not understand something and to try and to want to understand something and just not get it, because your brain is just not, whether you're whether your brain is capable of understanding it or not. But I'll tell you, my daughter's fourth grade teacher explained math to me with the new, what's the new way
Common
of
Core.
teaching math? Yeah. And I know so many people hate Common Core, and they hate the way math is taught in Common Core, but I'm going to tell you that I got it. Like, she explained it to me, and it was like the first time I understood math ever, because it was just a different process. It's like, oh, I don't have to put the numbers and carry the numbers and do like this thing. It was a totally different, it was conceptual in a way that I understood it. So, you know, maybe I could have been better at math if I had Common Core when I was younger, and I wouldn't hate it so much. But to this day, I'm terrified of numbers. I'm numerically challenged. But so it's all about for me, just being able to take a concept and make it simple enough so that it can be consumed by someone else, and then being able to explain it enough in a way so that they can take that on their own and duplicate it on their own, and then show someone else how to do it. So a lot of times with my kids' classes, after I show them how to draw something, I'll tell them, go home and teach your parents. Go home and teach your little brother or your little sister or your older brother or older sister how you did this, because then that solidifies the process of what they just learned. And then my favorite thing is like hearing the parents from years ago, when the parents would say, oh yeah, you know, you guys were drawing dinosaurs. Like, Johnny came home, was drawing dinosaurs all week and showed his little brother how to draw dinosaurs. So that's when you know the concepts are clear enough, because they're just off and running. So yeah, I mean, I love teaching all ages. And in fact, I just taught a comics class to Google. It was for they had a summer event, and this event planner had contacted me and said, oh, we want you to teach comics classes to this tech company. They're having an event, and we're looking for different enrichment providers or whatever. And they said, yeah, can you do it? And I said, absolutely. Like, I do this all the time. And then they sent me the link, and the link was like Google blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, is this Google as in the meetup, or Google the company? And it was Google the company, and I had no idea. So yeah, I taught comics classes to some people at Google a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
And they got it. So that was fun.
Yeah, I would like to add in because I teach like 3D, and I tutored like a kid who had Asperger's, and this goes for any kind of kid or student where you like are telling them, okay, because sometimes when people are in 3D, they're trying to change things, but they're like so far away, or they're like at an angle where you can't, like, okay, turn it around so you can see or something like that. And so to have to tell him to do that a couple times, and then he like starts to naturally do it, I'm like, I taught him that, how to do that.
And that's the joy of teaching, right? When you see them do something on your own, you're like, yeah, good job.
Yes. So what are the differences?
The differences. So the differences in teaching kids and adults, gosh, kids are more accepting of, concepts, and adults are, like you had mentioned, they have to unlearn stuff, and the unlearning isn't necessarily concepts. It's more of along the lines of bad habits or, limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And things like that. I've worked with a lot of adults this last summer who have been creative all of their lives, but never really had never really had an art class before, or maybe they took art classes, but they just didn't have the time to devote to their art. And it's really cool to be able to help those that are older kind of progress in their path towards their career aspirations, and then to see them make those goals happen. Like I just recently had a student, Kevin Bell, who told me the other day that he is retiring from his job and is going to start working as a full-time freelance illustrator.
Nice.
And yeah, he had just gotten his first book deal as an illustrator. So, and I'm really excited to say that I was there to help him through that process. I was one of, many people who was there to help him through that process. But I think adults know stuff. Kids don't. So you are giving kids the first information.
Yeah.
And adults, you have to like unlearn and tell them not to do certain things. Whereas kids, it's like they're a clean slate, Yeah. Except for the kids who are like the kids who I have a challenge with, and I don't know if you've seen this, is the kids who are like super creative. And the kids that are super creative, they are judging everything based on what's in their head. So if you show them how to draw something and they go, well, it's not good. And everyone's looking at it going, oh my God, this is fantastic.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, no, because it doesn't match what's in here.
Right.
Because those creative kids can see what's in their brain and they know what they want it to look like, but they're not able to get it. Whereas a lot of kids are just like, oh, look at that. I did this. Like, I had no idea, and it's the truly creative gift. I don't want to say gifted because we're all gifted, and talent it's an ability to create something that you can work on. But the kids that are truly imaginative, who have that kind of right brain strength already in them, they're the ones that are the challenging ones, because you're working on helping them to get what's already in their brain out, and then to not judge that in the process. Because we're all hard on ourselves as artists.
Experience with me. So like I was a child where I had this clown in my head and I could never get it on paper. I'm like, that's not how it looks in my head though.
Yeah.
So, but then you're like fast forward to an adult and you're like, oh yeah, foundational stuff is important, but it was boring when I was doing it. So I kind of sped through it and like, oh, okay, maybe I should go back and learn the foundational part. Because I'm one of those people where it, like, if it's really hard, it's easy, but if it's simple, it's hard or boring. So like I learned how to crochet when I was 9, and I didn't create a scarf until I was in college.
Really?
Like I tried to do like house shoes, hats, purses. I didn't create a scarf until somebody asked me to create a scarf in college.
Okay, but let me get this straight. So you learned how to crochet when you were 9, and you crocheted all kinds of things, but not.
Yeah, they were like lopsided, but I like did like house shoes, hats, like. But the scarf is like
dresses, like teapot cozies, like Kleenex box covers, like
lopsided and bulky and stuff until I got good, or decent. Like I would never really got good, but yeah, I didn't create a scarf so I'm like straight to like hard or detail, which when I'm learning to sculpt and stuff, I have to be like, okay, form first and then form, and then detail.
Yep. It's all about the big to little concepts, and that's hard for a lot of artists too. I know, a lot of young artists, especially in high school, they're drawing, they're doing their own thing. They enjoy doing their own thing, and they just want to do their own thing. And that's great. Do your own thing. But do you want to know how to draw things from your mind, or draw things from observation, or draw hands, or draw feet, or, do you want to be able to paint in a realistic way? Maybe you don't, but understanding how to do those things, the foundations of this, the foundational skills of art, you know, understanding form, understanding shape, understanding structure,
Mm-hmm.
understanding tone, light, value, color theory, all those things. Yeah, those are concepts. Those are basic principles of art. And if you can understand those will help you do your own thing even stronger. But
Building blocks.
is it boring? Maybe. But it's like, you know,
It's like
learning
when you have to draw
scales.
like 20 circles, like, can I just draw one?
No, you have to draw 100. That's what we did in my, that's literally the first assignment in my drawing for animators and illustrators class. I show them how to draw a perfect circle. And they have to draw 100. And they have to be perfect.
Now that I have the knowledge, I'll be more open to it. But like back in the day.
Yeah, I know. Nobody wants to do it because it's boring, you know, but it all depends on what you want to do, you know. So, yeah.
So let's do a couple more questions. As a former member of the animation industry and a teacher, what have you decided is your purpose in regard to Blackness and Black professionals in animation?
Well, my mission with OC Art Studios now is to uplift and educate as many Black artists as I can,
Mm-hmm.
because of it's important to have a diverse talent pool
Mm-hmm.
in the animation industries and the illustration industries, and it's important to have those stories be told. And as an educator, I see my role as, you know, being able to help increase the talent pool in that way, and that's basically what I'm dedicated to. And I do, and it started in a very organic way, but
Mm-hmm.
that's where I see the need right
Mm-hmm.
now, and so I've kind of been dedicating my educational resources to that, and offering free scholarships for Black artists
Mm-hmm.
to take classes with OC Art Studios so that they can, increase their skill set and learn their knowledge, and have access to mentorship
Mm-hmm.
with people in the industry so that they can, so that they can have a chance. That's my goal.
When I was doing my research, I read one article and it quoted you, but then it was like, as a brackets woman of color. I was like, she probably said Black right there. And so I was like, why do people have so much trouble with the word Black? And so why is Black important? Like, because some people, even like when whether it's like white people or maybe other people are talking about Black people and they say people of color, and it's like, nope, I'm saying Black. Like Black. So what? So why is Black important at least at this time?
At this time, well, okay, so this is interesting because, like, I would have said like 5 years ago, before the Trump era, I didn't feel like it was as important. Having Obama as the first president was huge, and there was just so much. There was so much hope and possibility, and it sounds silly to say that because that's what he basically was screaming from the treetops was hope, but. But it's true. So then counter that with this man who comes in who doesn't know anything about anything and is now putting targets on the backs of people who are different from him. I strongly identified as a Black woman more in the Trump era than I ever had, because I felt as though I was targeted. And I'm sure you felt the same way, as a woman and as a Black woman.
And I was living in the South.
So. And you're living in the South. I mean, come on. So I didn't necessarily, I never necessarily strongly identified myself as a Black woman. I'm biracial, half Filipino, half Black. And for the longest time, I didn't even know where I could fit in. I actually, in college, I was more involved with the Filipino student union than I was with the Black student union. My Filipino family was really close, my father's side, my Black father, his family lives on the other side of the country, and on the East Coast, and I don't see them very often, so I'm not very connected to them. I grew up in Orange County. It was the only chocolate chip in the cookie, so like I didn't know a whole lot of other Black people. All of my friends were white, most of my friends are still white. So and that's why, like, when I opened up my classes to like Black scholars, and then seeing my Zoom screen with all these beautiful Black faces, it was just like, it made me want to cry, because it was the first time I really felt like I had a community that I was kind of creating that was supportive, where I could see myself. And that was really important. So I never really identified strongly as a Black woman until I felt like I had to stand up for my rights as a Black woman. And even my stepmother, who is half Black, half Korean, she doesn't identify as Korean at all. She identifies as Black. She grew up in LA, and she grew up in a Black family, and she was adopted, and grew up in a Black family and in a Black community. So that's how she feels, and I guess that's the thing about identity, is that you can, it's roles, it's names, it's labels, but it's where you feel comfortable. And at least for me, I identified as Black because I felt like I needed to stand up for myself, and along with everyone else in our community, to say, like, this is wrong. This is just what is happening. The world is wrong.
So last question. If someone was producing a documentary about you, what things would you want them to highlight about your life outside of your work in animation or your career? Like, what other stuff would you like them to highlight?
Oh my God. Probably just how resilient I am, maybe. I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of obstacles. People always have obstacles that they have to deal with. And I think that anything that focuses on my resiliency would be good in the face of adversity. Yeah.
Your documentary could be called La Resilient instead of Larissa.
That was a good one. I like that.
Cool. So I would like to thank you for coming on my platform and allowing me to highlight you.
Thank you so much. It's been really great talking with you, Deborah.
So to everyone out there, I want you to like So I Know It's Real, comment and tell me how you feel, subscribe to Seal the Deal, and sign up for post notifications to show your zeal. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.